Alongside Blair Angulo, I am Emily Proud, and welcome in to the College Football Recruiting Show. A reminder to hit that like button and make sure that you are subscribed. Happy College Football 25 video game day release, early release, I should say, to all of those who celebrate. We certainly do here on this show. That's all any of us can talk about at the moment. But Blair, we're professionals, okay? We're going to wait until after this show to plug in our consoles and start playing. But we do appreciate those of you who have put it down for the time being to watch us live. But Blair, I'll just start with this. What emotions are you feeling on a day like today?
Well, it's been over a decade since we were able to play the game. And I think for us, particularly as we follow recruiting very closely, it's really cool to be able to see some of the names we've talked about on this show the last few years. And Emily, I don't know if I can wait until the end of the show. I'm getting ready to fire things up here.
Okay, well, it should be a fairly quick show. We're going to squeeze a lot of fun into about a half an hour. But please wait, Blair, because we got a lot to talk about. Let's go ahead and show you what's on tap for today's show. As per usual on Monday, we will go around the country for the latest recruiting intel from our experts. Plus, we're all pretty used to Alabama tearing it up on the trail, but in the post-Saban era, we'll discuss just how monumental this month is. And Texas is hoping to see some recruiting returns. We'll tell you where they stand with some top prospects. But first, let's hit those headlines. Quite the weekend, as I said, for the Tide. Alabama landing a pair of five-star prospects in wide receiver Caleb Cunningham and offensive tackle Ty Haywood. And just like that, Alabama has the number 2 class in the country. Blair, what statement is being made by Kalen DeBoer this summer?
Emily, they're calling it cold summer inside that recruiting office in Tuscaloosa, and their rise in the rankings has been quite chilly. Bama was number 8 nationally heading into the month of June. Now they're creeping up right behind Ohio State for the top spot midway through July. This new staff is showing that they'll be a recruiting force.
We'll have more on that later in this show. Elsewhere in the SEC, earlier today, Texas landing the number 3 athlete in the country and 4-star Nick Townsend. What will he bring to Austin?
A dynamic two-way player who would be highly rated at a number of spots, including tight end, linebacker, and edge. Townsend is a big jumbo athlete who will get his start in Austin as a tight end. And considering how he moves in the open field and how electric he is with the football, we'd expect him to be a favorite target for the Longhorns down the road.
Whew, he just looks hard to take down. Hank South will actually join us later on with more on him and all things Texas, so stick around for that. Meanwhile, his Decaney teammate, Tanook Hines, also making his college commitment this afternoon. The 4-star receiver picking USC. How will he fit into Lincoln Riley's offense?
It's going to be a dazzling role. Hines has the chance to be the player that can blow the roof off of the offense. He's got elite speed and probably the heir apparent to Zachariah Branch in that Lincoln Riley offense. There's a lot to like about this fit for the Trojans.
All right, another pledge happening over the weekend. Top 150 prospect, wide receiver Travis Smith Jr. picking Tennessee over in-state Georgia. What can Vols fans look forward to with their new receiver?
Everyone at Rocky Top is going to love this one. One of the nation's best pure outside receivers. Smith does everything really well, from catching the football to running routes to getting open over the middle of the field and in key third down situations. He's a real threat in the red zone as well with his size. So Vols fans, get ready. You're going to really like this well-rounded skill set.
Finally, you watched it go down right here on the 24/7 Sports YouTube channel. Another top 150 prospect, edge CJ May, picking Louisville. He is the first top 247 commitment for the Cardinals 2025 class. Blair, that speaks to his impact, but what does this win mean for Louisville?
It's a great pickup for the Cardinals. They're looking to sign a high schooler from the state of Alabama for the first time since 2022. Louisville beat out Syracuse and Washington for CJ May. He's one of the top pass rushers in the South, and he should bring a lot of juice to that defense.
It's time now to go around the country, get the latest recruiting intel. You will hear from national recruiting analyst Tom Loy, Alan Trieu, and our own Blair Angulo. Here is Tom to start off the recruiting roundup.
Thanks, Emily. The first prospect I want to talk about is Greensboro, North Carolina, Grimsley High, top 100 defensive lineman Bryce Davis. The 6'3", 245-pounder who is ranked number 64 overall in the class of 2025 by 247 Sports has long been considered a Georgia lean. Well, it seems things have changed over the past few weeks as Clemson has been trending on the 247 Sports crystal ball. The other team in contention seems to be the Duke Blue Devils. However, when it comes down to making a best guess at where the elite defensive standout is going to land, all signs point towards the Tigers and Death Valley. If Clemson can secure his commitment on July 20th, which is Davis's scheduled commitment date, it would be a huge pickup for head coach Dabo Swinney and his staff. They've been relentless in their pursuit of Davis, and the Tigers could use a big, big victory on the recruiting trail. The other prospects I wanted to talk about is Hitchcock, Texas High School top 247 receiver Kelshawn Johnson. The 5'11", 160-pounder from the 2025 class is set to announce his commitment live on the 247 Sports YouTube channel on Tuesday, July 16th at 6:30 p.m. Eastern. So, where's it going to end up? The finalists include Texas, Texas A&M, Arkansas, USC, and Texas Tech. The 247 Sports crystal ball is clearly pointing in one direction, the Aggies. My pick as well is on head coach Mike Elko and his staff. Since day one, the staff has made Johnson a top priority, and they made a great impression during his June official visit to College Station. Now, obviously, with 24 hours left to go, anything is possible in recruiting, especially in this day and age. But I do like the Aggies to get that one done, and it would be a huge pickup for Mike Elko. Now let's head to the Midwest and hear how things are going for Alan Trieu.
Thanks, Tom. The pool of Midwest blue chippers in the 2025 class who remain uncommitted continues to shrink, and it's going to shrink even further in the coming weeks. It will shrink by one by the end of this week, as Shaker Heights, Ohio safety Trey McNutt, a five-star prospect, is set to announce his commitment on Friday. He's considered several schools, including USC and Ohio State, but right now, signs are pointing towards the Oregon Ducks, who got his last official visit in June. I do believe that even if he doesn't choose their schools, USC, Ohio State, and plenty of other programs like Florida will continue to recruit McNutt following the announcement. So we will wait to see what happens on Friday, but signs are pointing towards another top recruit headed out to Eugene. I also expect five-star offensive tackle Andrew Babalola to set a commitment date soon, and I expect him to announce before the end of summer, possibly before the end of this month. As we've said before, it continues to be Michigan and Stanford battling it out, with schools like Oklahoma still on the periphery. Word is the Wolverines have certainly closed the gap after Stanford appeared to turn the tide towards them during his official visit. It's a tight two-horse race between those schools right now, and I don't believe we will have to wait too much longer to find out when Andrew Babalola will announce his commitment, and I believe that that date will be somewhat in the near future as well. Back to you, Blair.
Thanks, Alan. It is decision week for Derek Meadows, the five-star wide receiver from Bishop Gorman in Las Vegas, was all set to reveal his college choice this past Saturday until he wasn't. He ends up delaying it to July 18th, which is this coming Saturday. He is considering Alabama, Georgia, LSU, Notre Dame, and there's another school in there. But by the way, it's only LSU and Notre Dame right now. This is a process that has really dwindled down to those two schools. It was looking like the buzz was with the Tigers in the final hours down the stretch, but Derek Meadows right now is really deciding between those two schools. It seems to be going back and forth. He wasn't ready to reveal his choice, but he will be making a decision this coming weekend. And speaking of the Irish, who have seemed to have gotten a lot of the attention there, Madden Faraimo is another prospect that is high on the list for them. He's also considering Texas and Oklahoma and USC and Ohio State, a number of other programs in the mix there for Madden Faraimo, who told me this past weekend that he's hoping to make his decision by the end of the month, possibly in early August, as he really kind of dwindles things down. He wants to go through the summer school visits and everything that's kind of happening with his own process academically. So Madden Faraimo also set to reveal his college choice coming up soon.
Thank you, everyone. We have the best recruiting team there is, so make sure that you are checking out all of their great work at 247sports.com. You've got VIP info, recruiting rankings, and exclusive coverage of the College Football 25 video game. You can find it all at 247sports.com.
Y'all think people really want to go to Tuscaloosa? Tuscaloosa ain't cool.
I was getting ready to bring that up.
Went to Tuscaloosa.
I was getting ready to bring that up.
Saban.
I was getting ready to bring that up.
7 wins.
So back to Mike DeBoer, Dennis Franchione, and Mike Shula. Back to them coaches?
Yep,
That
back
what we
to
doing?
them. Back to them. Brody Croyle at quarterback.
That's bad. That's bad.
Sorry.
I don't know. Whew, the Alabama and T-Town hate from an LSU grad. Color me shocked. I would say, though, someone should show Ryan Clark that these recruiting rankings exist, but the Alabama's recent rise has been hard to miss. It has been the storyline over the weekend. Kalen DeBoer's squad now boasts the number 2 class in the country with the highest average per player ranking. So let's bring in our friend Brett Greenberg from Bama 24/7 to find out just what's going on. And Brett, let's start here. How has Kalen DeBoer been able to hold up these Alabama recruiting standards that Nick Saban set?
Yeah, I think it kind of starts with what a lot of recruits tell me at the beginning when he was first hired. When Kalen DeBoer came into that facility and these top prospects came into the facility for these visits, he was acting like Kalen DeBoer. He wasn't acting like Nick Saban. And a lot of these family members and a lot of these recruits really appreciated that. But at the same time, he still carried a lot of the same values and traditions that made Nick Saban who he was and made Alabama so successful. So for starters, I think that's been a very big thing, and the continued momentum in the recruiting. And then one thing that I've also been pointed out to a lot is a lot of these current players and every single coach is hitting you up if you're a recruit, no matter what position you are. You're hearing from Ryan Williams, you're hearing from Jalen Milroe, you're hearing from older guys that are, have one more year and probably going to the NFL, but they care about this program. And these younger players that are 2025, 2026, and these family members are really, really taking notice of that. And there's certainly a lot of momentum in Tuscaloosa, and Blair kind of hit on the top of the show. It's like 105 degrees in July in Tuscaloosa, but it's cold in the facility.
Brett, Ty Haywood was one of those big commitments for the Tide recently. How do you see him fitting into what the Tide want to do up front?
Yeah, I mean, for starters, he's kind of like that final missing piece to an incredible offensive line class, if you will. The name I keep hearing in comparisons and to him talking to 247 scouting experts across the network is a guy named Alex Leatherwood, who Alabama fans are very, very familiar with, had a spectacular college career, made it to the NFL, played a couple of years for the Raiders as well. But this guy's 6'5", 285. You can see on the film here, moves like he's not 6'5", 285 pounds, extremely athletic. And again, kind of just that final piece in that 5th offensive line commit to this class. And again, he's a guy that Alabama doesn't necessarily need to have ready day one. Alabama's got a very loaded room that they're adding this guy to, and he can learn from guys like Caden Proctor. So it's a perfect fit and another big piece to the number 2 class.
Brett, the only thing better than getting a commitment from a 5-star is getting 2, and that was the case for Alabama over the weekend. Also landing wide receiver Caleb Cunningham. What do you think of this add to the Tide's offense?
Yeah, you can't really overstate how big of an add this is. This is kind of maybe Jamarcus Shepard's first big fish, if you will, at that position. We've heard for months and months, and I've heard from conversations just how good of a person he is, how good of a recruiter he is, and how good of a coach he is. And Caleb comes to the fold, and you can see it on the tape here. He can kind of do it all. He can line up on the outside, line up on the inside. He's very versatile. He's gonna go get any 50-50 ball over anybody. Watching his basketball film, and I know a lot of the 247 guys love these multi-sport athletes. He's averaging nearly a double-double over his career over 3 seasons. He's got one of the best dunk tape highlights in high school right now. So you're adding a superb athlete, and you're adding, the number 1 player in the state of Mississippi to an offense that features Keelan Russell, newly fresh 5-star. So this offense is, this class was kind of defensive heavy, but now you're picking up some very key targets on offense.
Brett, I alluded to it earlier in the show. Alabama was number 8 heading into the month of June, which has obviously turned the tide there in Tuscaloosa. They are number 2 right now, right behind Ohio State, with a lot of room and a lot of runway for them to add pieces. Who else is on Alabama's list?
Yeah, I think number 1 kind of top priority for a lot of Alabama fans and for this staff is A.K. Deere, number 1 running back in the country, decommitted from Ole Miss, I believe, June 28th. This is a guy that Alabama has always been high on, even with Nick Saban. This is a guy who told me that Robert Gillespie, the running back coach over in Tuscaloosa, if he wasn't retained, the Crimson Tide would have been out of it. He ends up committing to Ole Miss kind of unexpectedly in the spring. Alabama gets him for an official visit down in June, and that seemed to be very, very good weekend. And, you see on social media kind of just the want for him. And that's a guy I'm certainly kind of following pretty closely. And another guy I'm also talking about, you add 1 5-star receiver in Caleb Cunningham. Alabama would certainly like to add another is in Khalil Lockett out of Texas, who's set to commit on August 7th.
All right, before we let you go, just sticking with the theme of the day, as we're calling it, with the new college football 25 video game coming out, which Alabama players are you most excited to play with on that game?
I'm not going to surprise anybody here with most of them. Jalen Milroe, for sure, just with his quarterback, unlocking that Kalen DeBoer offense seems to be, you see it right there, kind of his read option ability. Another guy is Kendrick Law, kind of that Swiss Army knife, kind of use that joystick. And then another guy that people are not going to be surprised with me saying is Ryan Williams. I think a lot of people in our network will probably be excited to play with him as well. Can do it all, can power return, kick return. You've seen the highlights. I was just looking on Instagram, he was already posting a story of him scoring over another team in Tuscaloosa. So these kids are having a lot of fun already. Blair looks like he's going to have a lot of fun when we wrap this up as well. So it's an exciting time in college football for sure.
Man, I didn't even think about the players. I'm sure they've all been posting pictures and videos, the ones that splurged for the early release. Or they got a copy of the game, right? So they're good.
I would think so.
I would think so, yes. I think that was part of the deal in giving their name, image, and likeness. So happy that this game exists. So happy that you were able to be on our show today to talk about all the fun things happening at Alabama. Thank you so much. You can, of course, read more of his work at Bama247.com. The crew is also down in Dallas for SEC Media Days, so follow along for more coverage at Bama247.com. Elsewhere in the SEC, Texas hasn't seen the recruiting returns quite like Alabama, but Steve Sarkisian and his group are still in it for a lot of high-profile prospects, and with it being months away until early signing day, there's still plenty of time to finish strong in 2025. So to get the lowdown on all things Texas, we're going to bring in Hank South of Horns247. And Hank, let's start with top 247 quarterback KJ Lacey. I know he's been a big, I wouldn't say point of contention, but conversation among the Texas fan base. He's been locked in for well over a year now. But of course, Auburn is making a big push to try and bring him to their side. So what's the latest you can tell us?
Yeah, he's been Texas's longest tenured commitment. He joined the class in June of 2023 at camp, and he's been on board ever since. And yeah, the last couple weeks, there's been some buzz about Auburn starting to make a heavier push for him. I think it's been pretty clear they're not going to win out in the Juju Lewis sweepstakes if he is to flip from USC. And so they've kind of turned their attention to KJ Lacey. Not that they haven't been in communication with him throughout the whole process, but now that they're maybe more focused on him and maybe Notre Dame commit Deuce Knight as well. So, checking in with sources around his recruitment, the vibe I'm getting is, he's still solid with Texas. I think when you ask KJ himself, he says, as long as nothing changes with Texas, nothing is changing with me. Of course, you have to consider the fact that Auburn is the home state school. It's a lot closer to Auburn, Alabama than it is Austin, Texas from Saraland, so you can't discount that factor. But at the same time, he's been very excited about this class. He's been helping recruit. He's working on these big-time wide receivers and offensive linemen, trying to get them to come with him. So all signs right now point to Texas, but we are certainly, taking into consideration the idea the fact that Auburn is, kind of turning up the heat on him.
A lot of Texas fans are also wondering what's up with 5-star safety Jonah Williams, the in-state prospect, especially as we see the MLB draft this week, Hank. And I know he's going to be a player that we maybe potentially monitor at this time next summer. What can you tell us? What's the latest with Jonah Williams and Texas?
Yeah, so, he's a guy that didn't officially visit Texas this offseason. So the last time he was on campus was April 6th for that Longhorn City Limits recruiting event they had. And some people, raised their eyebrows a little bit. Why didn't he officially visit Texas? It was never the plan to visit Texas this summer. He never had that scheduled throughout the spring, but he was saying he wanted to visit in the fall. There's been kind of some back and forth. We've seen, Texas not be mentioned. Texas isn't getting an official visit, but I checked in with him last night. He says there's actually a chance he's going to be in Austin next Thursday for their pool party they have at the end of each summer. So if you're Texas, that's a win. Get him on campus, see where you can go. Hope he doesn't decide this summer and takes his recruitment into the fall. Maybe get an official visit then. One interesting note with Jonah Williams, you mentioned the baseball. Texas just hired Jim Schlossnagle from Texas A&M, a coach he's very close with in terms of baseball recruiters. And when we asked him for his reaction on that a couple weeks ago when the news broke, he said it really helps Texas. So, there's been Oregon buzz, there's been A&M buzz, there's been Oklahoma buzz. There hasn't been Texas buzz for him yet. Maybe they change that here in the next couple weeks if they're able to get him on campus and, maybe change the narrative to his recruitment. But Texas would love to add him. Who wouldn't? He's the number one linebacker in the rankings. Obviously, one of the kind of those hybrid players, can play safety as well, which is where Texas is recruiting him. But yeah, certainly a very intriguing recruitment we're tracking right now.
Player I don't believe will be drafted in Major League Baseball draft is top 247 offensive tackle Nick Brooks. This guy is a beast. I think we have him listed at 6'7", 345. So big dude, somebody that I know a lot of schools are very interested in. But what is his status with Texas right now?
Yeah, this guy is a Kyle Flood special, Texas's offensive line coach. He loves these just big guys that have athleticism at the same time. He's 6'7", 345 pounds. Kind of similar to another Iowan in Caden Proctor that's at Alabama. But that's another interesting recruitment. So he took an unofficial visit to Texas for the spring game. Then he returned for an official visit that June 14th through 16th weekend. And entering that weekend, all the buzz we were hearing was Georgia and USC were out front for him. After that weekend, he's kind of gone underground. We haven't, we're out at the airport trying to interview some of these kids leaving on flights. We missed him. I don't know how we missed Nick Brooks. He's a big guy, but we did miss him. But checking in with sources that were around him that weekend in Austin, there's some cautious optimism about Texas's chances here. He's obviously one of their, probably their two remaining offensive line targets, him and Michael Fasusi, and they would love to sign him in this class. And, that's kind of been the buzz for the last 4 weeks is that Texas is in this. And I'm not discounting Georgia, who's obviously, they can get pretty much anyone they want, and then USC as well. But it kind of seems like Texas is trending in this recruitment. And, we haven't heard from Nick. We don't know when he's going to announce. I would imagine we'll see an announcement sometime this summer. But yeah, definitely one Texas fan should circle and keep an eye on. Maybe not as realistic of a, potential get entering the summer, but now it seems like Texas has really picked up some traction here.
Nick Townsend was a really good pickup for the Longhorns, and he's one of the best jumbo athletes in America. How do you envision him fitting into that team?
Yeah, Steve Sarkisian loves to be able to use the tight ends. Obviously, he likes to have blocking tight ends. They have that with a guy like Amari Winston that they had committed in last fall. And then Nick Townsend, you turn on the tape. I mean, what can't this guy do? I think obviously the first thing you think of is Jatavian Sanders. I think he's probably maybe higher of a ceiling of an athlete than Jatavian Sanders. This is a guy that at 245 pounds this spring ran a 10.9 verified 100-meter dash. And so, I talked to his coach and, they play him. You see his defensive highlights. You see his offensive highlights. He's their long snapper. The coach told us, he could, if he wants to play quarterback, he could probably go in there and push some guys to play quarterback. He's just kind of one of those guys that jack of all trades can just succeed wherever you line him up on the field. So I think this is a really exciting get for Texas. I think they can use him in all sorts of ways at that tight end position. And, a lot of excited people in Austin today. This is a big recruiting win, one over Alabama, one over, USC, a lot of big time programs to get this one done. And in a period of time where there haven't been a lot of wins going Texas's way on the recruiting trail.
Also sounds like an athlete that would be really fun to play with in the new college football video game. Along those lines, we did ask Brett, so we got to ask you, Hank, who among Texas's team are you most excited to play with in the new video game?
Yeah, I don't think there's any question. This wide receiving core, I actually have already been playing. I got one game in real quick before this. But in terms of the wide receiver, Silas Bolden, a guy that wasn't in Austin this spring, he was a graduate transfer from Oregon State, former All Pac-12 player. So not a lot of people know about him. We didn't really get to see what he could do in the spring. But he's been a fun player to use. I can already talk about it. Scored some touchdowns with him. Kind of a do-it-all kind of player, kind of in that Keelan Robinson role. They can do all sorts of things with him. And then can't forget about Ryan Wingo, the true freshman 5-star. We saw him, what he can do in the orange-white game this past spring, pairing up with Trieu at quarterback. He's an electric playmaker, kind of reminds a lot of people of kind of a Jamison Williams, Deebo Samuel kind of hybrid, just speedster. You see it in the highlights right there. So I think those guys, but, I think just toss it up if you're Quinn Ewers and, someone's going to catch it with all the wide receivers they have.
All right, Hank, what's your record so far? How'd you start?
1-0. Although
Okay.
I will say I played Texas State to get the cobwebs off. No offense to Texas State. And that it was a challenge.
It was a challenge.
To kind of get it going, but it's awesome.
Yeah, I'm just mesmerized by how realistic everything looks. In our last segment, we were switching between highlights from the video game and real life highlights, and it was like genuinely hard to tell which was which. But we won't keep you any longer, Hank. Thanks so much for being on the show. Congratulations. 1-0. There we go. You can read up on all things at horns247.com. You better believe that they are all over the first ever SEC Media Days for the Longhorns, so check out all their coverage at horns247.com. Commit HQ is busy this week. Starting tomorrow, we have a live commitment from Kelshawn Johnson. He'll pick between Texas, Texas A&M, Arkansas, USC, and Texas Tech. That commitment is at 6:30 p.m. Then we've got 2 on Thursday, Dylan Robinson and Jarquez Carter. Robinson's finalists are UCLA, Washington, and Notre Dame. Carter's are Florida, Miami, Ohio State, Penn State, and UCF. And finally on Saturday, 5-star wide receiver Derek Meadows. He delayed his commitment from last week, but will pick between Alabama, Georgia, LSU, Michigan, and Notre Dame. And Blair, I'm putting you on the spot because you talked about him earlier in the show. What's your final prediction for Derek Meadows?
All the buzz has been on Notre Dame throughout the recruiting process. It sounded like LSU was going to be the pick last week. I think the delay makes this a toss-up between Notre Dame and LSU, but I'm going to go with the Irish. I don't have any insight there. We're going to be hosting the announcement this Saturday. It's going to be a lot of fun. I think those two are deking it out. I don't know if a decision has been made, a final one. This is why recruiting is so crazy in this modern day and age. But I think right now I'm giving the slight edge to the Irish because they were able to delay that decision.
Already juicy commitment. Just got a little bit juicier with that delay. But we will find out where Derek Meadows is headed for college. You can watch that right here on the 24/7 Sports YouTube page. Blair, thanks for sticking it out. Go play with your Bruins. Have some fun, and we'll be in touch. For Blair Angulo, I'm Emily Proud, and this is the College Football Recruiting Show.